One of the oldest questions in the property game. What's better, to buy a property cash or to buy with leverage? In this quick educational, I'm going to take you through 3 case studies. A 2-bedroom apartment in Primrose, a 2-bedroom apartment in HILLBROW, and a block of flats. And I'll show you why leverage tends to beat cash in most instances.
I educate people to reach financial freedom through property through cash flow positive investments, specializing in the low income multi-let residential market.
Cash or leverage? Well, it really depends what you're trying to achieve. Cash tends to give you a better cash flow, whereas leverage tends to give you a better return. To bring my point home, let me show you an example. So this is a Primrose property. It's a 2-bedroom flat, asking price of $370. It looks quite nice on the inside. It's your normal sort of low income situation, fully tenanted, in decent condition. So this would be a great starting investment. If we look at it from a cash perspective, this is how the statement would look. First of all, you'd have nothing on your bond repayment, right? You're not getting any debt. You're not going to the bank and asking for a loan. You're putting all your cash down. So you've got 0 bond repayment, which is nice, right? That means that your cash flow is going to be good. You've got rates and taxes. You've got your provisions, your insurance, your maintenance, your management, all of that stuff. And let's say you're getting a rent of $6,000. So $6,000 minus your provisions, minus your levies and your rates, you're left with $3,300 in positive cash flow. That's profit on a monthly basis. Your return is okay, 9.9%. The way you work out your return is you take your cash flow, times it by 12, so you annualize your cash flow, divided by your cost in the deal. So I've put $400,000 there. That's for the purchase price, plus buying costs, things like your transfer fees, maybe some renovations. Let's assume $400,000 is all in. So your return is 9.9%. Not great. You know, it's better. It's beating the bank. You know, your bank interest rate is sitting at probably about 6-7%. So you're doing better than what the bank is providing. But I wouldn't say that that's an amazing return. Let's now look at a leverage situation. So now you're going to the bank and you're asking them for a loan. So here I've asked for a 330,000 Rand loan, which means that on a 8.5% interest rate over 20 years, I'm going to be paying 2,863 Rand on a monthly basis to service my bond. The once-off costs there you can see is 34,000. So I still need to put down my deposit. I might need to still touch up the property. Maybe there's some upfront renovation costs, but ultimately I'm only putting in 34,000 plus those few extras. So now my bond repayment becomes an expense item on my monthly cash flow statement. I still have the same levies and rates and taxes. I still have to put my provisions in place. My rent doesn't go up. So what happens is as soon as I bring leverage into the conversation, once I get finance from the bank, my cash flow goes down, but my returns go up. So my cash flow is only 437, which is not as attractive as the 3,300, but my return is greater. Why is that? Well, because I've got less of my own capital in the deal. So I take my cash flow again, 437, I annualize it to get a annual figure, and I divide it by 66,272. So that's the transfer costs of 34,400 plus the deposit, plus maybe some renovation, upfront renovation costs. So now my return is sitting at 15%. I'm getting a 6% increase or 5% increase as soon as I go leverage. So that's the concept. When you put a cash purchase down, your cash flow increases. Once you put more debt onto the property, your return should increase because you've got less of your own money in the deal. Now, if we're looking at leverage specifically, leverage allows you to scale and accumulate more, right? Because there's only so much cash that you have available. If you're deciding that you just want to do cash purchases, it's likely that you'll only buy a property every 5, 7, maybe 10 years because you're going to have to use your salary to save up and eventually you'll have the funds to buy cash. It's not a great way to scale your business. So here's the HILLBROW example. Let's imagine that you're going to buy a 250,000 1-bed apartment in HILLBROW. What's better, cash or bond leverage? Okay, so if we go for the cash purchase here, I've just got some high level numbers, assuming the rent is 5,000 and your monthly expenses, so everything, your rates, taxes, provisions, etc., is 1,800. You've got a healthy cash flow of 3,200. The capital required, so the purchase price plus transfer plus any renovations, 300, you've got a return of 12.8%. On the surface, that doesn't look bad. 12% is decent. If we now go to the leveraged situation where we go to the bank and get finance, now we've got our bond repayment. So that's our servicing of the bond. I've just assumed a 7% interest rate on this one. And that's because the time I was analyzing this deal, it was 7%. Prime is no longer at 7%. That was COVID days. It's now sitting at 9.75. So your bond repayment will be 1744 with your upfront total costs being your deposit, your transfer fees, and your bond registration fees of 54,000. Okay, so now I've put the bond in, I've put my expenses in, my cash flow suffers because as soon as you bring debt into the picture, cash flow goes down, but my return goes up because the capital that I have to put in is minimal. Now I've used 7% interest. I'm just trying to show you the concept. Obviously, you need to use whatever the prime interest rate is at the time that you're looking at an investment. So which one's better? All right, if you've got 300,000 in capital available, you could buy one HILLBROW flat, making 3,200 at 12% return. You've got no debt on that side. Or you could buy multiple properties. Using that 300,000, you could put that as a deposit down on multiple properties, right? So with your cash, you can buy one unit, making 3,200 cash flow at 12% return. With leverage, you could take your 300 and put 50, 50, 50, buy 5.5 units. Your accumulative cash flow for those 5 units would be 8,000 Rand. Your return would be 32%. Which one's better? In my mind, the better option is going debt, but I'm quite comfortable with leverage. I'm quite comfortable getting debt. A lot of people in South Africa are uncomfortable with debt based on their conditioning or what they believe debt is used for. But I hope that this concept makes it real that with cash, you get better cash flow. With leverage, you're able to scale, you're able to buy more and accumulate more wealth, and your returns tend to go up. But leverage is sensitive to interest rates, okay? So you have to make sure that you're getting good terms on your debt, otherwise it becomes unaffordable, okay? Let me show you an example now of a block of flats. This is a commercial property in nature, which means the banks will attach a commercial term to it. Okay, so to make it practical, let's run this deal. Let's assume that you can negotiate a 2.2 million Rand purchase price on this block of 15 bedrooms. On the inside, it looks good. Minimal renovations required. It's a nice block. If we were to get home loan terms, okay, now home loan terms means the bank is giving you a good interest rate, prime, or something similar, over a 20-year period. On a 2.2 million Rand purchase, you're looking at a monthly bond repayment of just under 20,000 Rand, okay? So that's a pretty healthy bond repayment. That's not too bad. If the rent is 40,000 minus your OPEX and your provisions, you're walking away with a cash flow of 2,700 Rand. Your return is 21% because you're using mostly bank's finance, right? We're assuming 100% finance from the bank. So you take your cash flow times by 12, divided by your once-off costs, which is shown there on the Property 24 image. You know, you've got your bond registration and transfer costs. Sounds great, sounds like a good deal, but the banks are not going to give you those terms. The banks are not going to give you prime lending rate. The banks are not going to give you a 20-year payback period. In fact, one of the few institutions that does lend on a block of flats is called TUF. And TUF gives loans at prime plus 3, or plus 3.5 over 10 to 15 years. So I've plugged those numbers into the bond calculator. I've used an interest rate of 12%. So not 9%, 12% over a 10-year term, and look at the bond repayments. The bond repayments have gone from just under 20,000 to 31,563, which is crazy. So our OPEX and provisions don't change, our rent doesn't change, but what does change is our cash flow is now negative. We are now funding the lifestyle of our tenants. This is no longer a cash flow positive deal. So in summary, cash flow works better with a cash purchase. Returns increase with leverage, but it is subject to the terms and making sure that they are attractive. In my opinion, it's always better to go for leverage. Property is a debt business, but make sure that you have run your numbers, that you're confident with your rental income and that it will cover the debt. Make sure that you add in a margin of safety with your interest rates. We've seen over the last few months that interest rates have started spiking because inflation is an issue. So make sure that you add 2-3% into your interest rate and that the deal still works, so that if there is a fluctuation in the market, you know that you're covered. If you're looking for cash flow and you want to avoid debt, that's totally fine, but you must realize then you won't be able to scale your portfolio at a rapid rate.
I hope you enjoyed that video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Please go and check out my YouTube membership. You get access to exclusive content. I'll also analyze live deals on your behalf. So go check out my YouTube membership for that and so much more.